Hey there. I think I'm a couple of minutes late here, but it's technically 1:30. So, um, for anyone who's going to jump on here, I'm happy to see you. I'm happy that you're watching my video. We're going to talk a little bit about three things that could be blocking you from writing your business book. Um, so many people want to write a book for their business, and one of the most challenging things is to actually get the whole thing done and get it published. You know, we write stuff all the time. We write Facebook posts, we write emails, we write grocery lists, we write all kinds of stuff all the time. But then all of a sudden you sit down to write your business book, and there are all kinds of things that can happen along the way that keep you from actually getting it done. And even if you have somebody saying, hey, do this, do this, do this, and there you go, there can still be some things that kind of make you struggle. So I want to talk about those things today. And the first one is a lack of direction. I can tell you from experience that you can't just sit down and beat on your keyboard and just dump everything out and go, yay, it's a book. When I was in grad school, I know some people have heard this story already. I started writing a book, and it was so much fun, and it was just so awesome. I sat down and I started writing, and I sat there until I had like 3 chapters done, and it was some crazy hour of the morning. And months later, I looked back at that and I went, wow, I had no idea what I was doing. It was very stagnant. I focused on talking about one character and then talking about another character. There was no movement in this book. And it's the same thing when you're writing a business book. You have to have a plan for the book. You have to actually have an outline. You have to know what's going to happen in chapter 1 and what's going to happen in chapter 10, all before you sit down and actually write the verbiage for the book. If you watched my last video, I think it was back in December, we were making Christmas cookies. And I talked about how you don't just walk in your kitchen and fling open the cupboard and go, all right, I'm gonna make cookies. Cookies usually need flour, they might need chocolate chips, they need eggs, and you just start dumping it all together and you create cookies. Well, no, you have to have a recipe for that, for cookies. And in that scenario, I needed to make Rice Krispie treats. That's what we ultimately decided to make. So if I was throwing flour in a pan, I would have had to toss that out because you don't use flour in Rice Krispie treats. Part of the process is actually planning out your book so you don't have a ton of stuff that you have to throw out. You aren't wasting your time. And as a business owner, I know your time is so valuable. And that's why I want you guys to plan your book before you actually sit down and start working on it. So that's number one. That's one of the things that can keep you from actually finishing your book, lack of direction. Because also once you start getting into that and you have no direction, sometimes when you pull back and you look at it, you just go, I have such a mess here. I threw spinach in with my Rice Krispies and butter, and now nobody wants this. I'm just going to throw it out. So that's the lack of direction problem. Number 2 is writer's block. And what I mean by writer's block is a whole myriad of things. Sometimes we sit down at our computers and we have so much stuff going on in our heads that doesn't involve our books. Hey, Gabby. It doesn't involve our books, but it's taking our attention away from the book. So maybe something happened at work, or maybe something happened to one of your kids at school, or maybe you're trying to plan a birthday party or something, and you've got all this stuff going on in your head. And you sit down and you go, I have to write a book, but this is all I can think about. That's writer's block. That's keeping you from actually being able to focus on your book. So with something like that, you have to actually step aside and go, I need to address this stuff in my head before I can come back to my book. And sometimes all it takes is, like if it's the birthday party, okay, I need to just sit down and write out my guest list, figure out where we're going and what kind of cupcakes my kid wants. Boom, that's all done. Now I can focus on my book because it's not stuck in my head. Or if you're frustrated about something, pull up a separate document and just type about it. I'm so frustrated because this is going on and this, and just dump it all out. Then it's not in your head anymore, and it's not distracting you from your book. Some other things can be fear. Maybe you're afraid that once you do get your book out, that somebody's going to say something negative about it. Or once you get your book out, maybe the people you thought were going to buy it don't end up buying it. Those are things to address with your editor or with marketing, but that's not something you need to address when you're writing your actual book. You have to have your plan, you know your audience, you know your purpose. Just get the book done, and then you can worry about your marketing. You can worry about who's going to buy it. You can worry about, what if somebody says they don't like it? And I want to say up front, chances are most of the people who are responding to you about your book are going to give you positive feedback, especially if it's family and loved ones. So if you think that you're going to get negative feedback on your book, put that out of your head, because somebody's going to say something negative about something everywhere in the world at some point. I'm sure somebody has said they didn't like your hair or your outfit or what you named your kid or whatever. That's not something you have to worry about all the time. So just focus on that book and get it out there, and you can deal with those people as they come later. There are lots of other things that can keep you from writing your book as far as writer's block goes, stuff that's just blocking you from actually typing, causing paralysis. But for a lot of that stuff, just taking the time to address whatever the problem is, or stopping and going for a walk, exercising, doing something else to kind of get you moving, physically moving, or to get your creative juices flowing. I always recommend dancing or exercising, coloring in a coloring book. Stuff like that is going to get you away from, this is my book and I have to focus on it. And it will get you back into a creative mindset so you can actually work on your book. The third thing I wanted to talk about is the process itself can sometimes be so confusing that it stops you all the way at the beginning of the process, the writing. I've had people ask me all kinds of questions about, how do I get an ISBN? Or do I have to buy 5,000 copies of my book to be able to self-publish it? Or, do I have to already have a following to be able to, publish a book? They ask me all kinds of questions, and they haven't even thought about, this is the outline for my book, this is what I want to do. It's all this stuff that's so preliminary that it's stopping them from the whole process. And that's why it's important to kind of have an understanding of the whole process of what you need to do each step of the way. And that can be addressed in several different ways. You can ask me a question. I always am willing to help answer questions. You can always do a little research. And then there's just the whole write the book and then deal with the different parts as they come. There are many different ways to address this. But I did want to make sure that you guys know that I'm offering the Brilliant Business Book Intensive coming up in February, and that is actually going to eliminate confusion about the writing process. For this course, it's a group course, and I'm offering it to up to 12 people, so the seats are limited. And we're going to go through how to actually write your book, what you need to do for publication, a little bit about marketing, what you need to know about finding an editor, taking care of the cover, actually working with a print-on-demand publisher if that's the route you want to go. All the steps in the process are going to be laid out for you so you don't have confusion. And I have a handy checklist that you can look at and say, oh yes, did that, we're good. Because I've been through the writing process 6 times. I have 6, they're all fiction books. I have 6 books that I've published, and I figured it out on my own. I didn't know the marketing piece at that point. I just knew I had to get these books written and out the door. So I initially started working with, I had an agent for a couple of years, and that didn't work out. So I was hunting for other agents. And while I was doing that, I was rewriting my books and cleaning them up. And I mean, my career was developing as a professional writer. So I was taking what I learned at work and applying it to my books. And from that, I figured out so much stuff that I should have done on the front end. And as I went through this process of trying to find an agent, figuring out all of that stuff, I finally decided, I'm tired of this and I want to self-publish my books. I want to be in charge of them. I want to handle everything with them. I have the capacity to deal with the cover. I knew what I wanted for the cover. And being a professional editor, I knew how to handle the interior pretty well. So I finally ended up publishing all my books in 2012. That was the same year I was pregnant with London. So, you know, some people like nest and clean their houses. I published 5 books that year. And after that point, I didn't deal with them at all. They basically sat on Amazon and nobody bought them because didn't have a marketing plan. I didn't do anything with them. Every once in a while I'd say, oh, hey, I'm a published author. And, you know, nothing happened with them. So I know from experience that you have to have an idea of what you want to do with them. You have to have a way of selling them. You have to have some way of actually getting the attention of your audience. And when you have a business, you already have a built-in way of getting your audience's attention because you have a following. So that's one of the most important things you can have, a following. People who are waiting for you to drop that book and give them a really simple, quick way to answer some of their biggest problems. So that's why I wanted to do Brilliant Business Book Intensive. And it's coming up, I think we start February 5th. So we have just a couple more weeks in January for everybody to sign up. And anyone who signs up before January or by January 31st gets a free half-hour consultation with me where we can talk about your book privately, figure out some of your main concerns, and get you started the right way. Our first coaching call as a group, we're going to start talking about our audience and our purpose and how we figure that out. So I'm really excited to get you guys working on your books. And of course, if you have questions about either the course or you know, writing and publishing questions in general, I'm always open to answer questions. I want to help you guys out as much as I can. So if well, geez, I've been on here a while. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. But if you guys have questions, drop them in the feed. I'm happy to answer them that way, or you can PM me. And I'm going to put the link for Brilliant Business Book Initiative in the feed too, so you guys can check that out. I am very excited about this because I'm going to help 12 people write their books in just 3 months and get them out there so they can actually make a bigger impact in the world. Thank you. I'll talk to you guys soon.